Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Omega Metroid podcast from OmegaMetroid.com. My name is Andy Spiteri, joined by Dakota Lasky, Doominal Crossing. Gentlemen, how are we doing today?
I'll throw out the Doom first because it is most recently this guy's birthday. So everyone has to wish a big birthday to Doom.
Yeah. Did I hear that
you
had claimed that you hadn't thrown up in 10 years? Did I read that right?
About 10 years. About 10 years. Probably less than 10 years, but like roughly 10 years since the last time I threw up. I don't know if I can talk about that on the podcast. I don't know if that's
let's not go
any further.
Let's not go into detail, but that's quite the record that no longer exists.
I'm happy for you, man.
Yeah. So happy birthday. What kind of birthday are we talking here? Like a big one or
kind of like more low key, but like with a really special group of friends. Some friends that I actually met at the exact same convention that I was attending this weekend. So I got together with all of them again.
Nice.
We drank a little bit. We met some really cool people. I got to meet Xander Mobus, the announcer of Smash Brothers, the most recent one in Smash Wii U as well. And so he autographed my strategy guide. He's a pretty chill dude. Go follow. He's on Twitter as well, so go follow him. Check out what he's got to say.
Cool. Well, happy birthday, and I'm gonna get a quick plug in and thank you at the same time. Doom was good enough to take a bunch of really cool screenshots for me for our new Metroid Zero Mission guide, which is available right now on OmegaMetroid.com. Dak, what's going on? How are you?
I'm pretty good. Enjoying as we record this, the rest of my 3-day weekend here. Was enjoying the rest of my summer. Had a pool party with some friends. Enjoying the latest and greatest big releases. I mean, the last week or so of gaming, as at least on my end of gaming, there's been a lot of big releases. Like Armored Core 6 came out. Been enjoying that. New raid in Destiny 2 came out. Finally beat that. I did a 6-hour run from like midnight or like 10 p.m. to like 4 a.m. last night, which was a little egregious, but got it done. And then been trying to play Starfield, but it hasn't been running well for me. But I'm looking forward to getting it running well and playing it. So looking forward to that. But yeah, been gaming, hanging out, enjoying the rest of my summer, and also reading the second half of this Metroid manga, which I read earlier today, and I am excited to talk about it because I think we have a lot of differing opinions here as we go into the latter half of this epic Metroid adventure.
I agree. I'm really excited to talk about it, and I have to say to everybody that if you missed our episode last week, we covered part 1 of the Metroid manga. I thought it was one of our best episodes ever. Actually, I was really I thought it was a really great episode. I thought everybody was kind of firing on all cylinders, and I obviously, if you're going to listen to part 2, go listen to part 1 first. But I thought it was a great episode, and I am excited to revisit part 2. I will say one thing is that as you guys can see, I'm sitting here recording in a toque and a hoodie, and I feel like summer is like officially over in Canada. So it was plus 30 degrees, which I can't remember what that equates to you guys, but it was plus 30 on Saturday, and now it's like overcast and rainy and smoky and miserable outside. So I feel every bit of September this long weekend, but which actually kind of matched my mood because I was, and not that I don't like September, but it's something, there's something sullen about summer ending. And when I read Metroid Manga Part 2, I almost felt that same kind of sullenness because to backtrack a little bit, I went into the manga last week, and I wasn't really sure what to expect. I'm not like a big fan of manga in general. I'm not like, but I love like, American style comics. So I was like, maybe I will like this. I have the Zelda manga. I'm not a huge fan of it, but I thought that Metroid might lend itself better to the medium. So I wasn't sure what to think, and I was really, really impressed with Volume 1. And I came out of that just being like, wow, this is like a really good story that I wish was like actually like kind of part of a Metroid game. And there was something about part 2 that didn't quite click for me, unfortunately, which is weird because I feel like it was like, I mean, it picks off directly where the first one ends, but it felt like everything the tone, like everything, the pacing was different, and unfortunately not necessarily for the better. Doom, what did you, just a really quick, we'll do some quick thoughts and then we'll go through the chapters and all that kind of stuff, but like what were your thoughts?
Well, I feel like I have to talk about, kind of summarize my thoughts with the first one again, for those, because it's been a week since we last talked about it. But basically, when we were going into episode 1 last week, I was like getting ready to like poo-poo all over this thing. It wasn't a fan, but hearing you guys talking about it really opened up my mind. And I think by the end of that episode, as you could see kind of my my thought process evaluate, I kind of came out of that episode with a different opinion on it going in. And while I definitely still think that it's got a lot of weirdness, whether it be from the translations or just some of the cultural differences between Western and Japanese culture, I think when you're willing to put that to a side and you're just able to look at it from a skeletal point of view, I think it works really well. And so I kind of approached volume 2 with that same kind of mindset, just looking at the skeleton, trying not to take every single page literally. And for the most part, I think I came out with the same similar interpretation. However, there is one, maybe 2 pages of material that I genuinely think is some of the most egregious things that I've ever read. And it sounds like a Tumblr fan fiction.
I think I know exactly what you're talking about.
I think you do too. And that one thing took me out of the whole thing. But that aside, I think it was fine for the most part.
Well, Dak, you were on fire last week. I had a few people say, like, man, Dak was on it last week. Like, I had a few people say that to me, so I'm really excited to hear what you think. And I'm curious because I kind of thought that you might feel one way, and maybe I'm wrong. So just really quickly, what were your thoughts?
This surprised me, and like there are so many, like I had so many expectations about this manga, both going into it last week and then coming into it this week, that I was really like my preconceived notions about what I thought this story was like going to be about and how it would work were just kind of thrown out the window. There were some things that I thought, like elements of the story, like things and themes that it approached, that I thought in some ways, like some themes I thought it was gonna like completely like drop the ball on, and I was like, oh, this actually wasn't that bad. And then there are other things that I thought were a shoe-in, like easily handled, and were very mind-boggling in how the manga adapted it. So it was very surprising. I didn't expect it how it was gonna go, and I have a lot to say about that. And yeah, I still think it made for a story that I overall enjoyed, and I'm glad that we read. I will say that the first volume is definitely stronger than the second volume. I went into this like the opposite of you. I was ready to like be like, oh, not hate it, be like, oh, this is not going to be great. It's actually a lot overall better than I was expecting. But volume 2 is a lot more of what I was expecting initially than volume 1 was. Volume 1 surprised me in how different it was going to be. Volume 2, this is what I expected going into it initially.
You know what? That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Like this is like based on like how Other M went and like my preconceived notions about like how this manga might have like influenced that, and then thus that's how this could be. I thought it was gonna go one way, and volume 2 is like all of that. So
yeah,
it made for a lot of interesting stuff. Made for an interesting read though, and yeah, I still kind of liked it. Kind of
like I can't sit here and say that I hated it, but I think that's a great I think that's a great way to put it, because like because I went into volume 1 not knowing what to think. If I'm being honest, maybe I probably was ready to not like it, or I didn't think I would enjoy it, and then I really did, and so I was very optimistic for volume 2, and it kind of reverted back to type a little bit for me. And I will say too, I don't know if you guys would agree with this, but I found for me this was a lot harder to follow than in volume 1, specifically because there's a lot more like action scenes, and just due to manga, because it's such a small panel, it's such a, it's black and white, you don't, and like I found like there was a lot more interactions between characters where it was a little bit more difficult to tell who was talking, and I felt like that presented itself more in volume 2 than in volume 1. But I don't know. But I don't know if you guys had a similar experience like that or not. But I felt like a few times I was just like, wait a sec, like who's talking again? Like what's happening? Like Samus is fighting who right now? So that did pop up its ugly head a few times, unfortunately for my read as well.
Yeah, I didn't. I mean, again, I think in both, at least both volumes for me, I didn't have a ton of time or ton of moments where I felt like I lost track of what was happening. But I will say that I do remember, and I'm scanning through here, having a couple notes of like, oh wait, I had to go back and like reread the previous couple pages. I felt like I had that just a couple more times this time around versus last week.
Mm.
It's I still didn't feel like, oh, I completely lost. I just kind of had to go back and be like, wait, what exactly happened? I mean, literally when the the first chapter, or I guess the eighth chapter or whatever it is, starts, Samus is not like knocked down on the ground. I was like, wait, how did Samus, like, did she get attacked? And I didn't realize. I had to go back and be like, oh, Ridley, when he swipes in, I didn't realize like he also like knocked her Samus down and like attacked her when he came in to
Yeah.
this big meeting in Torian that Samus had intruded on or whatever. To be fair, that was also since I had read it, a week ago, so maybe that was why. But yes, there were a couple moments for me that I had a little bit of trouble following.
Mm.
Yeah, about the I don't think it was more or less difficult to follow than Volume One. I think for me it was actually a little bit easier just because after reading Volume One, I'm more used to kind of that style, and so I kind of,
Yeah.
it's still difficult to go through, but you kind of you find a way to adjust to it.
Okay, well, let's get started. Let's go to chapter 8 and pick
Oh
up
yeah.
exactly where manga volume 1 ended off. And it's funny because in our Discord chat, we were chatting earlier this week about like, man, it seems like fans really love the idea of Samus having PTSD. And let me tell you something. If you are not a fan of the Ridley scene in Metroid Other M, this was it was close to as verbatim a scene as you can get. Now there are a few
Really?
key differences I think that make the manga a little less egregious and a little bit better. But yeah, I was just like, it was really hard for me not to. So what happens is Ridley is attacking Samus, and some characters are saying like, Samus has PTSD of the original attack on K2L, which is fair. That's a traumatic event. But it's really hard not to think of that other M scene for me watching that, which is probably my least favorite scene in Metroid, like just period. So that, fair or not, was in my head. Now there are some things that make this scene I think better than other M, and obviously Samus is a lot younger. She's a lot more inexperienced. She's not the Samus that we know and love and that has saved the galaxy and defeated Ridley multiple times over. So there is room for those considerations. But yeah, it was very, very Other M-esque. And it was a way to start off the manga, that's for sure.
I thought it was
So
really funny how that's exactly. I'll let you go ahead, Doom. But I did think it was funny how when we started reading this, or like when
Yeah.
I started reading this fast, I'm like, oh, we jump right into that because yeah, we did just have that
Yeah.
discussion. But yeah, Doom, go ahead.
yeah, there's no like warning or prelude. It's just like, nope, we're there now. It's even faster than the K2L raid in Volume One, which was already pretty fast on its own.
Yeah.
But believe it or not, as someone who is also very critical of like the other M stuff, I actually didn't mind it as much here, and I think the reason why, before everyone gets the pitchforks out on me, I think the reason why is for the reasons that you listed, but also I think a lot of the more melodramatic element, because it is the whole manga is very melodramatic in general. It is very much so in the forefront here. I think it works better in the manga format. I think if there was an actual game that tried to recreate this and we saw this all happening in live action, yeah, it would probably be very cringeworthy. I'd probably hate it just as much as, the other M thing. But like reading in the pages of the panel, and again, just me trying to separate, a lot of the more goofier elements and kind of just taking it what it is. I think as an element, I think it works in a story context. But I can also understand why someone might also have differing opinions on that as well.
Right. I'm hoping that I'm going to be the Doom this week, where you guys can kind of lift me up and build me up, because I can't, like, I didn't absolutely hate it, and like on its own, like it makes perfect sense for Samus to have these traumatic memories associated with this scary dragon that's flying down, and that it impaled her parents. But it was you know, like I said, fair or not, it really does kind of give you that other M stink, which is it's hard to shake off.
The way I see it, it's not so much that I was invested in it. I'm not like, oh my god, I love this so much. It's like, I'm fine with this. I can accept this. It's one of those things.
Right.
Yeah, that's so. This was one of those things that I was actually pleasantly surprised of how the manga handled it. Way better than other M, like way, way, way better. I don't. This is not even remotely as bad as the Ridley scene in other M. So, at least in my opinion, yeah, what you both have said makes sense. This is as far as my understanding, this is the first time Samus has seen Ridley since K2L specifically.
Yeah.
So that is
Yep.
a big trigger that I think makes a lot of sense emotionally and logically. Like in other M, one of the biggest criticisms that's on the chronologically,
Yeah.
Samus already taken down and met Ridley tons of times since
3 times
you
at
know,
that point.
yeah, at that
Yeah.
point a bunch, yeah. So and
More
multiple
than
times
3,
in the
yeah.
game. Yeah, more than 3. Whereas here, this is literally the first time. And then again, like you had said, Andy, she's way more experienced. None of the events of any of the Metroid games have happened yet. Like she's not an experienced bounty hunter at this point, so it all makes sense. That I was actually really fine with. But I can totally tell how when Other M was written, it was like lifted and kind of dropped into
Yeah.
Other M. And in the context of Other M, now it doesn't make any sense. But in the manga, how it's presented and where it happens in her life, and makes way more sense. Yeah, the scanlation's a bit clunky, it's a bit ham-fisted, it's a bit like tropey and melodramatic, but I actually did not mind it. I thought this was one of the strengths of the manga, that this makes a lot of sense for Samus's character. It didn't feel like super over the top. I don't know how accurate it is. Like I'm no expert on this kind of stuff, but it seemed like it made sense logically and also just made sense like from what I had seen in the story.
Right.
So yeah, I was pleasantly surprised with how, again, dialogue wasn't perfect, wasn't flawless, but it was not bad. And I like that it happened here and not in the middle of a fight down the road when Samus has already got a bunch of, notches in her belt and whatnot. Like this is kind of the perfect timing. So yeah,
I will say too, to build on top of that as well, like one thing that you get with this version of Samus and Ridley and the PTSD angle is at least you get like a payoff towards the end of the manga, which is skipping way ahead, but like you never get that payoff in Other M. So I admit I did have a little bit of a hard time separating Other M from this, because I mean that's a pretty infamous scene, right?
It is, but I think you can actually maybe appreciate this scene a bit more when you look at it in contrast to the Other M scene, because now when you kind of see this, it's like, oh, this is probably how it should have been done.
Yes.
And Other M was not, and now having come from that, I'm like, oh, this is a bigger improvement. Also, I feel like the manga really impresses upon the reader a bit more that it wasn't just Samus's parents that died. It was literally everybody on K2L, like her entire people.
Yeah.
So that I think comes across a lot more in this story. So it makes a lot more sense that there's way more trauma behind it. Where I think in the games, and especially in Other M, it's mostly Samus's parents, which obviously is a very traumatic event. But having not just your family, but all people on the same planet as you dying except you is on like another scale,
Right.
another level. So I think it also works a bit more because of that how the manga handles it in comparison to the games.
Mm-hmm.
Even directly like reference it as a Holocaust event.
Yes.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, they do. I agree definitely with both of what you guys are saying. That's some really good points. Okay, let's keep it going here, and there's a lot going on, so I'm gonna try and break it down and correct me if I get anything wrong here. So, really quickly, we switch and we see Samus's friends. So Maz, Kreetz, and
Wait, are we still in chapter 8? Or are we in chapter 9?
we're in chapter 8 still.
Okay.
And
Sorry, go ahead.
Piochi the rabbit, I believe is his name, and so they see that the space pirates are actually altering their own genetics using Chozo technology so that they can live and essentially set up their base of operation on Zebes, because the atmosphere, as we determined in part 1, is very hazardous, and there's a lot of other factors as well that make it a tough place to live. So they come across the space pirates doing that, and then at the same time we have Grey Voice, who you might remember from part 1. He is a Chozo, and he has defected over to the side of the space pirates in league with Mother Brain, which we all knew that that could only end one way, and so Ridley is here as well. And you know who I realized Ridley is like in this manga?
Oh, all right. I hope it's not. I had also a comparison. I hope you're not about to say it, but go ahead.
I think I might. Okay, he
Go ahead.
is Starscream.
Oh, okay. That wasn't it. Go
He's
ahead.
Starscream. Like he's that guy from Transformers, the underling that's always kind of looking for power for himself. He's kind of crass, kind of annoying, kind of like Ridley is Starscream. Who did you think he was like?
I was thinking Envy from Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, which is an anime I'm sure you haven't watched, but it's my favorite anime of all time. And especially there's a little panel. Well, I guess they're all little, but there's a panel where Ridley's talking about like kind of like toying with Samus about like, oh, I have to eat like flesh or like I can eat flesh in order to regenerate, which is where that little tidbit's dropped in. She's like, oh, I ate all the dead bodies on K2L, like I ate your parents. Like I wonder, like, are these their cells here, like here? And it reminds me like that little like those mannerisms reminds me so much of Envy, especially when they're in their like monster form in Full Metal Alchemist.
Yeah.
And that was the point when I made that connection. I was like, actually, this Ridley's kind of working for me. I wasn't totally on board with like the over the top and like maniacally villainy cheesiness from Ridley, but when I got to this point and it's like getting to the point where it's like a creepy, sinister, like, oh, there's just something wrong. There's something wrong with, obviously there's something wrong with Ridley, but like there's something wrong with this dude kind of thing. Like that's when I was like, oh, okay. This chapter, I was starting to get won over a bit more. Like when I kind of made that connection there, and maybe that's not entirely intended, but I was won over a bit more by Ridley's characterization when I kind of made that connection.
I had a little bit of a different arc actually. I was getting a little bit tired of Ridley in chapter 8 and chapter 9. I was like, God, this guy kind of sucks, like, you know. And then when I was like, who does he remind me of? And I don't know if you guys ever watched Beast Wars when you were a kid, but it's like a Transformer show, and there's a pterodactyl in that show who's like, he's basically like the Beast Wars equivalent of Starscream. And I was like, that's who he reminds me of, is Starscream. And I was like, you know, if that's what they're going for, I kind of do dig that actually, because like Starscream kind of sucks too, and that's what makes him such a good heel. And like,
yeah.
you know, like I kind of like that. You know, like obviously, I prefer my Ridley sinister and menacing and silent. But like if you know, if, for example, if Nintendo ever made like an Illumination Metroid movie, probably never happened, but if they did, and they needed to give Ridley a character and personality, I think they could do worse than like the Starscream kind of sucky villain. Like, yeah,
very talkative, which I think is maybe that's the side of Ridley here in the manga that I'm still not super like driving with, is how talkative
different.
he is.
Yeah,
he's so talkative. Like, but then again, it's like it's hard because it's a character that, at least from the games, doesn't talk. So it's hard. Like, where do you really piece that together when you finally adapt that? So, but yeah, interesting choice of words right out of the gate from Ridley on a lot of these panels.
Okay, so Ridley joins the fray in Torian as well, and so we've got Grey Voice, we've got Mother Brain, we've got Ridley, and we've got a captured Samus who actually, this is an important little nugget of information here. So Grey Voice, and actually Ridley says to Grey Voice, like, listen, you finish Samus off and you will earn my respect. And Grey Voice says, like, I'm not doing it. First and foremost, because I can't, because Chozo have an anti-violent, like an anti. They cannot inflict harm.
Violence, like gene or something.
If they start hurting anybody,
some Metroid Dread Toha gene nonsense.
I think it's really funny how like it's like there any opportunity to throw in some like gene modification or gene specific thing into the story, they're like they take that opportunity. They grab life by the horns. Like, yes, there will be a gene where you prefer vanilla ice cream instead of chocolate, or something. Like there's a gene for every little thing in the Metroid universe.
I like this, to be honest. It was so insane that I was like, yes, this is great. Like this is great. So the Chozo, or at least this particular branch of Chozo, I don't know about the other ones, but these guys cannot inflict harm, and if they do inflict harm, they inflict. It's almost like like if I punch Doom in the shoulder, I would feel the exact amount of pain that I inflicted in my own shoulder. I think that's the idea that they were trying to get across, right?
Or like
I
even
think
more.
so.
Like it would even
Maybe
like,
more, yeah.
Like you would feel it even more. Maybe I'm adding on there, but yeah, it's like you also take damage no matter what, and you can risk your own life
This was
by
awesome.
inflicting harm on others. I
Oh.
honestly at that point I feel like I kind of just glossed over it.
You know,
'Cause I was
I'm
like,
laughing, but
"Alright,
I
whatever."
like that. I feel like it actually like kind of fits with like the Chozo and like their enlightened being
yeah.
kind of deal.
I think I think it was pretty dumb and goofy, but at the same time, like I just kind of tossed it in like the cybernetic butterflies bin, where it's like, okay, I'm just separating this at this point.
It's one of those things
I'm
where like,
not gonna think about it.
is it better that like would I have rathered the Chozo having a literal like modification to their genes where they can't fight people, or would rather it be like, oh, the Chozo are so beholden to this like way of life that like it
Yeah.
figuratively hurts them to break it or something. I'm like, is that better or worse? And especially in a sci-fi context, I don't know.
Wow.
It's difficult. So.
I mean I think I know what I would pick. You know, but hey,
Okay.
you know, it's not the most
All right.
egregious thing in this comic. That's
No,
for
it's
sure.
not.
And
No, it's not.
So yeah, I kind of like the setup here where Ridley's like, you do it, and then and at this point too, Grey Voice is just like, the second reason he's not going to kill Samus is because he's still pretty convinced that she's going to come around and join their cause, and that's pretty much how the chapter ends. So we go right to chapter 9 here. Ridley is going nuts. He's just like, you know what? I'm gonna kill all the Chozo, but actually, what I'm gonna do, we're gonna have a public execution. We're gonna get all these guys in Criteria Square, and we're gonna chop them all one by one. And this is great. And so tell me if I got this right. So Kriitz, Mach, and Pianchi, the rabbit, they get back to the ship, and they've got like 2 hours. But you might remember that the Galactic Federation is coming to the planet Zebes to attack it. And Adam had told Samus that they have 48 hours to go in and save the Chozo before they come. And so they've got like 2 hours left. So all the rest of the gang, except for Samus, is back to the ship. And Samus had told them that they got to go. But basically what they do is they use the ship's cannons to set off an explosion, which has like a chain reaction, which eventually makes its way to Torian. And I had a bit of a hard time following the scene, to be honest, because it was black and white. It was a lot of explosions. So I think the gist of it is that they set off an explosion. It got to Torian. It caused a bunch of havoc down there. Did I get that right?
I believe what was happening. So I believe what was happening is there's a bunch of pirate ships in orbit that were connected to Mother Brain's central system to keep her operational, while the pirates were still embedding her into the planet. And so the chain reaction caused all of these ships connected to Torian to explode.
That makes much more sense. Okay.
That sounds right. I just remember them, I think, like remote controlling a ship to blast a rocket that has like an explosion go off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
that's mostly I picked up.
They were using like heat signatures to find the right targets and stuff like it. It was a little bit complex.
I felt like the salient point was Samus's friends helped her escape by causing an explosion, which was like, okay, like once my brain got that, I was like, okay, all the other details are not important.
Right.
Let's keep going.
So this is a cool point in retrospect, because when I wrote this note, I'm obviously in chapter 9, but I'm like, what's going on with Grey Voice here? Like he's covering for the fact that Samus clearly has friends helping her out, and he's just like, no. Samus has a history of disobeying orders. She has a history of like being a lone wolf. This is a contingency plan of hers, and so he's covering for Samus's friends to Mother Brain, which I thought was kind of cool. So I'm asking myself, like, what's up with this guy? Is he trying to do this intentionally? Does he legitimately think that, like, you know, Samus is in on it alone? So in a little bit that'll pay off, but you know, a nice little bit of storytelling here. And this also lets all the Chozo see another day, because Ridley's like, you know what? Instead of executing you, you can go fix everything that was destroyed. And then, so Grey Voice here is like the commander, basically, of the space pirates. Like, he outranks Ridley in this current succession right now.
Yeah, I was a little confused by that, because I guess Ridley is like, he's up there, but he's like Darth Vader, you know, like he's not sitting at the table, you know, making the decisions, but he's up there enough where he's gonna have a voice, I guess, but he's still gonna go off and do the major dirty work.
The dude is Starscream, yeah. He's he's a banana. He's a top banana, but he's not the top banana. So and by the way, Ridley and Grey Voice are like butting heads here. Like Grey Voice at one point is just like, you got to go now, and I thought they were about to throw hands at one point, and we'll get to there later. But I liked this little feud that they had, this mini feud. It grew on me as it kind of went on. So yeah, so the next panel, Kriets, Mawk, and Pionchi the rabbit have in fact rescued a few Chozo, I believe. I know for sure they rescued Platinum Chest, and I think they rescue everybody. Is that right? Because they pick up Samus, and she looks like the SAX. She's just like, kill me, and she looks like a zombie. She's very clearly still struggling with her symptoms from seeing Ridley. Again, I don't know if it was just me, but I was just like, oh, like did they pick everybody up? Did I miss that? Like, did I? So it was a little bit tough to follow, I thought. Again.
Yeah, I wasn't what I got was that they got the prisoners, which was the group, that small group that they had identified being held in that cell in the wall or whatever that was. Like I wasn't sure like what the whole prisoner situation was, if those were all the prisoners, they were just some of them or the most important ones.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming they were just the prisoners, and I honestly, not gonna lie, I don't know how they saved anybody, because Torian literally looks like when your computer freezes like 50 computer tabs like all stacked on top of each other. There's like no floor. So I didn't like, except for that one area where Samus is having this conversation with everyone else. So I was confused in how they were able to get everyone else out, but I'm assuming it's through, they were going through the vents that Mach and Kreitz were, I think, using. Yeah, so
Doom, do you have any explanation for this?
maybe I missed
Not
it.
really. Again, it's one of those things where I'm just like not gonna worry about the details. They rescued him. That's
Yeah.
the story.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, that's chapter 10. It ends with that creepy zombie Samus panel where she's like, "Kill me." So, I'm sorry, that was chapter 9. As chapter 10 begins, they're very clearly taking this PTSD angle to like an 11 out of 10. Samus is inconsolable. She is having flashbacks to the attack on K2L. I think that they're really selling the idea that she's struggling here, and then like she kind of has like a nice moment actually. I thought that this was kind of nice, where she has like this like I don't know if it was like a memory or like an apparition or something like that, but she sees like some Chozo that are just like they're basically saying like you have the weight of the world on your shoulders, like, girl, just cry if you need to cry, and like let it out and let it be gone. And she does, and it's like a little bit melodramatic, but I actually didn't mind this scene at all. I thought it kind of worked, and like it was, especially considering Samus is younger and like just starting her career. I thought it was all right.
Yeah. No, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where it gives us more detail on how it wasn't just like her parents that got all slaughtered in K12, it was all her people and whatnot. So there's a little more here as well. And obviously the title of the chapter, like Phoenix One, like Samus is kind of like rising from the ashes of her torment and trauma. And yeah, I think there's going back to that theme of like emotion versus duty, where I feel like now she's kind of coming out of this with like her own inner duty, like her own emotional duty, so to speak, like where she, like, what's most important now is not like the orders given to her and what she feels about stuff, but what is like her true like destiny, like what she was meant to do.
It feels like they're working in harmony now, rather than
exactly. Yes, exactly. That's and I was trying to dig deeper into like maybe that is the message of this, and or what of the themes or messages, and maybe that could be off. But I definitely felt that there was that like breakthrough of this sense of duty and emotion kind of melding and coming together. And by the way, before I pass it on, I did want to mention something, because you brought this up, Andy, the Chozo coming through and saying, yeah, like, we like, you have all this stuff to deal with, like, you can let it out. Like, the Chozo were the ones that made her the protector of the galaxy. Like, I like how they kind of come through to like, you have so much weight on your shoulders.
Yeah.
Like, you are the ones who put it there. You gave her all of this responsibility when she was like a teenager. It was like, hey, like, and then you're like, oh, well, I wonder how that happened. Well, you have here's a shoulder to cry on. So I thought that was kind of funny. But yeah, I honestly, again, I think that how the the manga handles. Again, there's a little bit of melodrama. I think that I don't know why you kept calling it the zombie panel or whatever, but like where Samus is like yelling and like, end me or whatever it is, like wants to die at the end of the previous chapter, like a bit melodramatic. But again, I think it to me how the manga's handling all this kind of stuff feels more logical. I would like to think that if you're going to do this kind of like character angle, that you're doing it accurately, right? Like it's dealing with like a subject like PTSD. Hopefully, you want to be doing it ideally accurately. No, I'm not an expert, so I don't know if this is accurate. It feels like if you were to tell me this is a more accurate representation of PTSD than what happens in Other M, I would be like,
I
oh,
believe that.
okay, I would believe that, and I would hope that's the case. So like when I'm saying like, oh, this feels like better, like this seems more logical, I would hope that it is more accurate and isn't just better for dramatic, for drama's sake. But I do feel like it's being handled with more tact and a bit more taste and a bit more, I don't know, a little more grace to it. So I again don't mind it here, and I think it kind of works. And Samus like gets back into it with a little bit of harkening back to the theme. So it worked for me, I guess.
Doom, any thoughts?
First off, I think we need to add like a Zora cameo counter in these episodes from now on. We've been getting some consistent Zora cameos.
She loves jumping up here while I record.
Absolutely. I mean, hey, I enjoy it too. But yeah, basically, I don't really have much to add. One thing I will say though is in the whole sequence, I kind of wish that Samus like got thrown around a little bit more, because like throughout the panel, at least the way I interpreted it, sounds like the whole PTSD attack was kind of the extent of it. She didn't really get into a brawl with Ridley and like get on the losing end of that. I don't know. Have any of you guys seen Invincible yet? The TV show based on the comic?
No, not yet.
Oh yeah, the Amazon.
It's on my list to
cartoon,
watch.
Omni-Man.
Yeah, Omni-Man versus So basically, I was thinking I wanted to see the finale of that episode, the Omni-Man versus Invincible finale. Slight spoilers there, but I mean, most people who haven't seen it probably know about it by now. But yeah, I wanted to see something, maybe not necessarily as gory and visceral as that fight. That would probably be too intense even for this manga. But like, I wanted to see Samus get beaten up, because I feel like the best characters, it's not about how hard you can hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep going. And I kind of wanted to see that happen to Samus a little bit. But that's overall a minor nitpick. I think overall though, the whole scene and the ultimate theme it was trying to go for still works really well.
Yeah, I think Samus might have not like physically got beat up a whole lot, but I was pretty satisfied with like what she went through, like on an emotional level, and it seems like she was pretty down and out, at least in, if not like I said, physically, then certainly emotionally. But I mean, I guess I can appreciate that. It always, like, a redemption arc obviously is always a trope that works because it's easy to relate to and you can get behind it.
I think it might have been a bit much if like she was going through all that stuff emotionally and mentally, and also was like getting just dumpstered physically.
A little bit.
I think it kind of like would have worked against it a little bit. Like the whole point is that even this emotional like aspect of it is so like it ends up being kind of a physical thing, like she is kind of getting beat up physically almost. Like it is that significant. Like I don't think you would need to kind of hammer it over someone's head, so to speak, by like, oh, and by the way, she's also getting punched in the face super hard.
Well, I will say,
I'm always down for a visceral fight, that's for sure.
Yeah, one thing, I guess, not to counter that, but just to add in, like, it's not like the manga is super subtle in a lot of other areas. So like, but I think I tend to agree that might have been I mean, at the same time too, like, I feel like, Samus is like a 14-year-old kid in this comic too. So like, I feel like I'm totally fine with seeing her like, complete her origin story, maybe get thrown around a little bit by the space pirates. But like, I also don't want to see like a 14-year-old kid, even if she's going to go on to be the most powerful warrior in the history of the world. I still don't want to see her get like, you know what I mean? So, and Ridley is going nuts here, by the way, too. He's throwing a big tantrum. And that all the prisoners have escaped. This is when I was just like, man, Ridley sucks, but like I kind of think it's cool. Like it's kind of funny how much he sucks. Like,
yeah, this volume won me over, I think, with Ridley, where I was kind of at that point I was bought in. I was like, okay, this is the Ridley I'm getting, and like I'm kind of down with the Ridley shenanigans. He's a bit more of like a little more comic relief, a bit more like maniacal, sinistery than menacing, but there is in and of itself a menacing quality because of how like just psychotic he is.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Like once you kind of just accept like Ridley, you know, he kind of sucks. Like he's pretty cool. He's pretty funny and very charming. Yeah. Okay, so everybody makes it out of Torian, or so they think. They are confronted by a group of space pirates, and this is where Samus starts to, I guess, to get it together and take the first step to becoming the famous bounty warrior that we all know her to be. And she whips out that arm cannon, and pow! And that's the end of chapter 10. So chapter 11 starts, and Samus is back to normal, and we got 1 hour. 1 hour before the Galactic Federation lands to make their attack. And so Samus says something that I thought was kind of cool. Like there's acid rain in Criteria, as we have to take the Brinstar route. So I kind of like that little bit of like, not world building, but just like attention to detail, I guess. Very minor thing, but I thought that it was cool. So what happens next, I think, is Platinum Chest gives up his life force to fully power Samus's power suit.
I was so confused by this because does he not die? Because he doesn't die. Because doesn't Samus talk to him later? Like after the prisoners have fully escaped, or is she talking? I think she talks to
Old Bird. By the way, I made this note in a little bit. Where the hell is Old Bird? Is he dead?
I thought he died earlier.
Did he die? I don't remember. Like I knew that he was captured in volume 1. Is he Gonzo?
I don't know. No? I'm not gonna lie. So my note here was, I think Platinum Chest or some Chozo resonated Samus's suit with light ? And then I keep going. So yeah, I honestly don't know what happened or what the significance of that was. Maybe it was like giving Samus a connection to Grey Voice or the other Chozo to help find them or something, or giving her some knowledge. I don't know. I'm not sure what happened. I'm not gonna lie.
I'm gonna be honest. I don't even remember this panel. So,
well, God rest Platinum Chest soul wherever he may be in the cosmos. But yes, he does in fact give up his life force to make Samus' suit all the better, and so he's gone
for Platinum.
Yeah, that's right. And in Torian, Mother Brain is talking up the space pirates. She's giving them kind of a pep talk and an inspirational speech on how they should approach their attack, when all of a sudden,
even though they're mindless drones, as the previous volume established, with a triangle pyramid graph or whatever, that they are mindless drones, but they need a pep talk. So
these little worker bees are they're having trouble working right now. So the queen bee's got to step in. Unfortunately for the queen bee, Mother Brain, someone in a power suit shows up to start throwing hands.
Oh, man.
And that, my friends, is revealed to be Grey Voice, which is actually kind of a cool reveal. And his power suit looks sick. His power suit looks really cool. Yeah. So at this point, I was just like, what? I was like, was this his plan all along? Like, did he only change course? Because there's a line in there where he says, like, the rest of the Chozo are not expendable. Like, they... I kind of inferred like maybe he was on board with everything, but then when Ridley was like, I'm gonna execute all the Chozo, that was the point where he was just like, you know what, I'm out of this. But we find out the answer to that later. But at the time, I was a little bit confused reading it. So here we go. Grey Voice is attacking Mother Brain, and his Chozo mental block against inflicting harm is killing him. And Grey Voice is just like, you know what? We created you, Mother Brain, and you're defective. You're a mistake. You are an abnormality that's perverted the original ideals that we created you with, which was to lead the galaxy into a united, harmonious future. And I kind of dig this stuff. You know me, I'm a sucker for like good AI kind of tropey stuff like that. So I was like, okay, I'm back on board. Like this is good stuff. And Grey Voice is playing some mind games here. And Mother Brain is losing it. And she's just like, no, I'm the future. And then Grey Voice pulls out the trump card. He's like, you're jealous of Samus. And it's pretty hard to argue that, actually.
You're jealous.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I
right
kind of
through the proverbial heart.
I'm not gonna lie, I kind of hated this.
Oh, come on!
Like I tried to throw it into the cybernetic butterfly dumpster. I don't know. This one was just a jump the shark a little bit too much for me.
Yeah, this was odd.
Honestly, it felt like a kindergarten level kind of temper tantrum argument. Like, you're a mistake. No, I'm not. I'm perfect.
Oh, come on.
I disagree though. You're a mistake. No, it was. I hated it.
This was good stuff. Come on. He was so over the top. It was great.
It was definitely something I feel like would have played better with voices and music and sweeping cuts, and maybe doesn't play as well on page, but yeah, this was something. So I didn't have as big of a deal with the dialogue itself. I was totally fine with Mother Brain being like over the top, whatever it was. My things with this were and aside from the lead-in, which is whatever Platinum Chest was doing, was the initial double cross of Grey Voice to defecting. I thought was great. It felt like there was a bunch of like it built towards it, like it was a big twist, even though like you might have known about it like going into this just lore wise, but like it was really cool. This the double cross kind of is like it doesn't feel like, because not as much time has passed. We don't really know Grey Voice that well, where like we know enough about him where the first twist works. Like we know he's a Chozo, we know he's a good guy. So like when he defects to the bad guys, that's
pretty
like,
impactful.
Wow, that's pretty impactful. Yeah, but if he changes back, I'm like, okay, I don't know enough about him individually. Like, is he the type of individual to double cross, like all this kind of stuff? So like I feel like you need to know a little bit more about the character when you start to go layers deep with these double crosses and backstabs and betrayals to make like their motivations make sense and be compelling. On the other hand, there wasn't a lot of time between them, so like you couldn't really, like, we were still like grasping and grappling with the first betrayal that the second double cross happens and you're like, oh, okay, all right, he's back on the good side, all right, great, awesome, we don't have to worry about it. And then third, there was just this element of like, did Mother Brain not see that? Not that she didn't see it coming, but like she didn't have any kind of backup plan. Like she just immediately trusted Grey Voice and didn't have like a contingency of like, oh, in case this guy that I just brought on my team betrays me, I can do blah blah blah. Like the fact that he was able to just, I mean, to be fair, he kind of just brute forces his way in anyway, so like what can you really do? But like doesn't seem to have like was like, whoa, like you're betraying me, like well, yeah, why would you have trusted this guy? Like even if he was on your side, like you just met him, or essentially not you just met him, but like you just put him on your team, like you don't know really where he's aligned. So that element of it too is in the back of my head. I'm like, wow, Mother Brain's so smart, but yet didn't have this like contingency plan in case this dude turns on her. So there were elements of that. Obviously, the mental guard thing is like, okay, how did the Chozo expand into space or do anything ever if they couldn't ever be violent to literally anything? Like that's just like whatever nonsense. Don't even think it needs to be in the story. So yeah,
that information would have come in handy for Dread.
Yeah, that also. Speaking of Dread, by the way, I did get it in this chapter and the previous chapter. The time that Grey Voice was aligned with Mother Brain and the Space Pirates, it got a lot of Ravenbeak vibes from Grey Voice, and I kind of felt like the inspiration for Ravenbeak, especially. I think Andy, you had mentioned when Ridley tells the Chozo to go fix the body adaptation machine or whatever. I thought that was Grey Voice giving that order, so I kind of got that like, oh, like. It reminded me of Ravenbeak giving Quiet Robe the orders to do stuff with the Emmys and whatnot, to reprogram them and take out Samus. So
maybe it was Grey Voice that gave that command. I could be wrong.
But I got vibes of that. But yeah, those are my issues with this. I didn't have the biggest issue with the dialogue. It was just kind of these like little logical things that were thrown in there that I'm like, didn't really work for me. And then the double cross was like, I wish I got more of bad guy Grey Voice, you know, there wasn't enough time. Like that's something that you save for a reveal later, like, and really build up to that. Like you get a little bit of a hint of it, but that's it.
It feels weird because before it's revealed that, you know, he was, you know, a double agent the whole time. Like he watches quite a few of those Chozo get yeeted by Ridley. Like, and
you know what though,
you got to sell it. You got to make
there is something I want to talk about. It's in the next chapter, but really quickly,
Remember, no Russian.
I want to say. I can't sit here and disagree with either of you in like the dialogue is hokey. like no doubt. But I feel like that's just something that I kind of accept in like a
Yeah,
manga,
I don't
because I
mind
mean
it.
like, but I will say I don't think Mother Brain is all that Mother Brain esque in the way that she's communicating. She seems very emotional when you're kind of expecting this very, artificial kind of being. And I can't sit here and say that I can't think off the top of my head of like at least a couple different ways that I might have done the Grey Voice thing and it would have been better. But like, I think at this point, I was just kind of like, I was kind of struggling to get into the second volume, and this was finally something cool that was going on. I was like, you know what, okay, I'm down with it, but I can't disagree with anything you guys are saying. I think specifically the Grey Voice turn, like I wish that there would have been almost like a Darth Vader arc to him, but like obviously very much condensed. But like maybe he legitimately did go with Mother Brain, and maybe the end chapter is maybe where he does something to redeem himself, because we see something later, but it's in like this weird. We'll get there. Actually, we'll get there.
Yeah, you don't get the redemption arc because he was always on the good side. So
Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, so we start chapter 12, and so Platinum Chest reveals this. I guess he's alive,
See,
or maybe
that's what I was confused.
maybe
with.
it's a
Platinum
flashback.
Chest- I thought Platinum Chest did. I don't think Platinum Chest gave his life. I think he just was like, "Here's some magic bird blight."
Me, I don't know what
I
the
don't
hell is
know.
going on here, to be honest with you. But Platinum Chest is here, or maybe it's old. But I don't know. One of these Chozos just like, all right. Grey Voice is he's a double agent. He joined the Space Pirates, and it was a ruse from the beginning because we knew that we had to take out Mother Brain, and I kind of like this part. To your point, Doom, where it's like the Grey Voice watch a bunch of Chozo get killed, where the Platinum Chest is like the Chozo were all so committed to this that like we thought that our lives were forfeit by doing this. So like I can kind of write off that little bit about why he might have just been like so seemingly malicious and watching his fellow Chozo get killed.
Though I do think it's funny how the Chozo set up this protector of the galaxy in Samus, and then didn't expect the
Yeah.
protector of the galaxy to show up to protect them. Not
Hey.
a lot of foresight from the Chozo, as you might have expected.
Well, I think clearly not. Like I think that this manga does a decent job of showing the Chozo as like not infallible. I mean, they did create Mother
Yeah,
Brain, they
that's-
created Metroids,
yep.
they're responsible for a
a good
lot of
point.
bad stuff. But yeah, so Samus is she's a little bit upset that she doubted Grey Voice. To be fair, I think I would have doubted Grey Voice too. That was a pretty convincing.
She's a little hard on herself
Yeah.
here. I think everyone would have been duped.
And I made a note here too that says like I would have liked to see a little bit more of bad guy Grey Voice, but it is what it is, and I did kind of like too that I can't remember if it's here, but like so Grey Voice also says like he's attacking Mother Brain with a weapon that is not in her database, which is I think for me that's kind of why I was able to dismiss a little bit in my own head like. Wouldn't Mother Brain have seen this coming? Or like maybe it was like something that Chozo pre-programmed, or like a weakness that they exploited because they built her. I don't know, but that's kind of cool. But here we go. This next scene, it's like a flashback or something like that. So we learn that Grey Voice's DNA is in fact the DNA planted inside of Samus all those years ago to help her live on the planet Zebes. And I was like, I can hear my co-host groaning from Calgary, Alberta right now. And it's basically the exact same story from Metroid Dread, except with Grey Voice in place of Ravenbeak. And what makes it even more egregious, I think this was worse than Metroid Dread, actually by like a mile, is that Samus immediately is just like, Dad?
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, jeez.
That's the part for me that made it worse, because I
Yeah.
think how this goes about the actual setup of it, I think is fine, because all right, if someone like if Samus got Chozo DNA, okay, there's probably someone who gave it. It has to be
Yep.
somebody, I guess, right? So it's Grey Voice, okay, fine, everything ties back together, whatever. But if Samus just like took the information and didn't take it like figuratively, like, or maybe so literally, I don't know, when it's like, oh, he's literally my father, that it would have been okay. But then when Samus is the one to like make that like conclusion uttered,
Yeah.
that's when it's like, just skip,
See,
keep going, let's go, keep going.
You
Just forget
guys
about
always
that.
kind of dumped on the Ravenbeak reveal because he said like I'm your father, but in my mind I was always fine with that because I was like Ravenbeak's trying to play a little bit of mind games here, like he's trying to get inside Samus's head to get an advantage. Where like this is she's
Maybe both are bad.
maybe they are, but I don't know. But
Maybe
like
both
I thought this was like a lot worse because like at least after Ravenbeak was like my DNA's in you, Samus just wasn't like dad, father, let's hug because this was bad. This was bad.
And it's so instant too. I definitely, from like the story point of view and like the familial ties, I think the manga does it worse. I think the reason the Dread one is also so bad is just again because of that Thoha Makin Metroid controlling. That's the part that I really just don't like in Dread. That's pretty irrelevant in this whole story right here. And so really it's just that weird familial tie thing. But again, it's one of those moments where I just toss it into the cybernetic butterfly bin.
I think sometimes
and
it's just a bit too much of the DNA magic, space magic,
little.
mumbo jumbo
Yeah.
for me. Because like it's not like Metroid already has so much DNA genetic stuff going on that when you start to add like, oh well, now you have this person's lineage and this thing affects how things are affected by your DNA, it starts to get a bit too much when we're already in the land of like, gene modification and cloning and vaccinations that change your DNA and like to a crazy degree and like change your whole body makeup and whatnot. Like that's already stuff we're kind of accepting, that you start to, there's that like, I don't know, maybe there's like a term for it, but like just the threshold of what you're willing to accept and like for the story to be enjoyable for you, right? Like there's certain things you kind of just accept that you are able to take into account so you can enjoy a story and be like, all right, that's how it is. I think when you add too much of that, it really starts to break that not immersion, but like compelling nature of a story, because you're asking the audience
Just
to
like,
accept
why is
so
this
much, like so much nonsense that it becomes a little bit overbearing.
You know what's good? This is off topic. Do you guys remember The Dark Knight Rises? I had a moment like that too, where I was like, my threshold was tipped, where Bane and his cronies managed to like bomb the bottom of Wayne Tower and all their expensive tech falls down and Bane takes it all. Like that to me, I was just like, I can't accept this. This is a little bit too far. And in this story, this one, I can't say that like, again, I was just kind of like, this whole thing is like so over the top and insane that like I can accept it, but it was pretty. I thought this was like a lot worse than Dread. Doom, is this the moment that you were? Is this a moment where you were just like, this absolutely sucks? Is this what you were talking about?
No.
Okay.
You can, if you look in the podcast chat, you can probably get a better idea of the moment that made me turn. But again, this is we're still tossing it in the cybernetic butterflies bin at this point. This isn't like wow, I'm turning full heel on this yet.
All right, so back in Torian, Grey Voice and Mother Brain are fighting, and then Ridley comes and he starts taking the fight to Grey Voice, and he gets the upper hand as well. Right. This fight spills out, I think, to Criteria is where they end up.
And see a Chozo statue.
Oh yeah, that was cool. And by the way, Samus also, once she found out that Grey Voice was her father, was like, I ain't getting on this ship. I'm going back for Grey Voice because I can hear him fighting.
She's a hero.
Yes, and. So yeah, Samus and Co are they're in space, I believe, at this point, and they're being chased by a bunch of pirate ships, and things actually don't look very good for them either. It looks like they're overwhelmed. But in his final act, Grey Voice destroys the ships chasing Samus, and I think that this was hard to follow. Again, unfortunately, a lot of explosions, a lot of different stuff going on. Certainly would have helped to have color, but that's just the nature of manga. There's this really weird panel where the Galactic Federation shows up, and we get this close-up of Kreitz, and he's just like, my fat mom moves faster than these guys or something, and it was just like, ooh, jeez. But Adam and the Galactic Federation show up, and they rescue Samus, they rescue all of her friends. Samus has this really lame remark about making her father proud, and that's how the chapter ends. And frankly, that probably is how the manga should have ended, but it's not. We still go on.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Yeah, so I really wasn't sure what was happening here. There's actually a pretty funny exchange between Kreitz and Adam here, where basically Kreitz, there's like a moment in the panel where it's bleeped out because he's losing it for a
That's
reason.
what I'm
And again,
talking about.
yeah, and again, I've had absolutely no idea what he's mad about here. Like I could not for the life of me figure it out.
I think it's because the Galactic Federation ships are taking so long to get in to either rescue them or attack somebody attacking them or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was something like that. They wanted to get the Galactic Federation's attention, but I didn't get from what, because I didn't sound like that they were being tailed by anybody. Whatever. But yeah, so basically he's just swearing nonstop like a sailor, and it's actually bleeped out in the panel. And then basically he doesn't realize he's on the intercom, and Adam calmly reiterates the request, like, hey, if you don't calm down, then I'm going to turn my effing ship the F around. And it's like, okay, that's a pretty funny line right there.
Yeah. What'd you think of this deck?
I will say I had some confusion because I thought Samus was racing back to save Grey Voice, but then she was suddenly leaving the planet and she was chased by space pirate ships the whole time. I got that, but like I thought she was on her way to save Grey Voice, and then suddenly she was trying to leave the planet and get away, and she was going to get saved by the Federation. Maybe it's because like she felt Grey Voice die, and that's when they turned around. Like she had that connection, and then she's like, "Oh, it's too late." And I missed that. I missed that. So I was a little confused.
Well, see, that's what I meant when I said it was hard for me to follow sometimes what was happening.
That this was the part where I was had a little hard. Like I was confused in how Samus ended up. I thought she was going one way. She goes another, and yeah, Federation shows up, saves the day, and boom. Awesome. So this was it felt like a climax, like that where everything was kind of building up to, and it wasn't. And when we got like that pullback, and then I'm not going to reveal what happened.
We'll get there.
When what happens, I was like, oh, that really wasn't the ending. I actually at first had an issue with how it was handled, but not over time. I was more okay with it. But for this particular chapter, I thought this was like a really exciting, like there's a lot of stuff happening. It was a little bit hard to follow, but it was exciting. I really liked the Ridley versus Grey Voice like fight, even though it's more of like Ridley just kind of murking Grey Voice. But I thought that was cool. A lot of cool art. A little confusing to follow, but Samus learns about the plan. We get a bunch of information. We get some cool action, and then it kind of wraps up like this, like end of the second act, like point. Like it's not the true climax, but it's like the climax before the climax, so to speak. But like end of the second act, kind of big moment here, and yeah, I was pretty good.
This felt like a very weird place not to end Metroid Manga Volume 2. And I suspect, I don't know this for a fact because I didn't do any research. I would have to imagine that there was plans to continue the Metroid manga that perhaps got cut short, and to eventually maybe consolidate it into maybe maybe book 2 would have ended here and book 3 would have been the next couple chapters plus like however many other chapters, because as we'll talk about when we get there, it's very abrupt, the ending, but it was weird because it felt like the next couple chapters to me, like they felt like they really kind of limped along, because it was like I feel like we had our climax and like we're introducing all these new characters and these new moments, and it feels, it felt weird, but you know what, let's get there. So fast forward a few years have passed.
Yes. Chapter 13, a time skip.
Yes.
Hits you with a time skip.
We have 3 chapters left, and we have a big time skip here. Like it looks probably like 10 years or so. Just by guessing.
I didn't get 10 years, but you could be right.
I got like maybe 4 or 5 years, maybe.
Yeah, I got only a few years.
I think, regardless, it doesn't matter.
I'm probably wrong.
So the space pirates have grown in number. They've rebuilt Zebes, and they are as big a threat as ever. Mach has a sweet beard now, and he's a commander. And we have a new leader of the Galactic Federation, Chairman Keaton, who kind of looks like somebody from Star Wars that I can't remember
Yeah,
their
he's
name.
got a prequel character you
Yeah.
liked from last time.
Yeah.
Gets promoted.
He's a cool guy. I like his little things on top of his head. His little
Well, I like
eyeballs.
this little character
Yeah.
progression. This is like a very minor character, but we're getting, even a little evolution of this character from volume to volume, so it's cool.
So I have to say, I wasn't a big fan of like this big epilogue-y kind of chapter, but man, Samus looks awesome in her like Audrey Hepburn getup. She looks so wicked.
Carmen Sam Diego.
Oh my god.
Like, I was like, what are we watching? I saw that, I was like, wait, is this a
I loved
what is
it.
happening? I thought it was really funny.
I have to tell you, I've never played Metroid. I know some people play Metroid because they're like, oh my god, Samus is hot or whatever. But I saw this panel, and I was like, damn, that's a sweet look, Samus. Like, get it? Yeah,
it's just a drawing.
Good. Hey,
sir, it's just a drawing.
She looked good. That's a cool look. I want to see that in a game. Make it happen. But yeah, I like this look. It was all like classy and whatever. And she meets a girl, and wouldn't you know it, this is the same little girl that she rescued back on, what the heck is that planet called? Jigrad?
Yes.
Something like that?
Something, the planet where Samus was going to execute the space pirate. It was that mission that the Federation learned that the space pirates could bleed, and Samus saves that girl, and then was going to execute the space pirate, and then crying, so she doesn't. Yeah.
So this little girl is named Damara. She's not a little girl anymore. She's actually a recruit in the Galactic Federation army of some sorts. And really weird. This is really weird. So Keaton, Chairman Keaton is, it must be like his big, like he's being sworn into office as the new leader of the Galactic Federation.
He's putting his hand on the Bible. And he's getting sworn into the Galactic Federation.
Pretty much. Like,
as is tradition.
So this new rookie kid, Damara, for some reason, has like this unlimited access to Commander Keaton here. And she gives him some flowers. And Samus starts running, and she's like, stop! And people are like, oh, she's a space pirate after our new chairman. Get her! And Adam is there as well, actually, I forgot to mention. Samus yells to Adam, get rid of the flowers. So Adam does. He throws the flowers away. The flowers mutate into a monster, which is like a space pirate assassin, and they take it out, and that's how the chapter ends. This chapter was a stinker. Like,
this is definitely filed under Butterflies with Guns.
Yeah.
So the time skip. So personally, what I think is and this is probably a very cold take for anyone who's read the manga over the past couple years or decades, really, is it's what I would imagine makes the most sense is the time skip should have happened, like the end of volume 1 should have been the time skip.
Mm-hmm.
Like the end of volume 1 should have gone all the way to the time skip. Time skip happens, and then volume 2 starts, and then volume 2 is the rest of the story. So
yes.
That's how it should have gone. I was okay with the time skip when I realized, like, oh, that wasn't the real climax. We're actually kind of building up to, like, we don't need to see Samus continue to grow up. Like, we can skip to when she's more of an adult. Okay, that's fine. The monsters and the flowers, weird. But then we also see this aspect of Samus where she's a bounty hunter. She's like, I'm a bounty hunter now. Side profile shot. Full splash art, blah, blah, blah.
Cool shot, by the way.
Cool shot. And there's this aspect of this fight where, by the way, Samus knows, like, we're not privy to how Samus knows that these flowers are going to turn into space pirates, and how she's like, yeah, this is the space pirate department of taking out guys with flowers at their ceremonies or something, and I knew about it. And we're like, okay, fine. That's like essentially what she says. And then, like, while she's fighting the space pirates, she's like negotiating with Adam on like the price of the bounty. Which, by the way, she ends up killing the thing before she's signed anything or shakes any hands. So she essentially did it for free. But it's implied that whatever she called out the price is what it's going to be. But there's this now new element to her character where she's now inexplicably a bounty hunter. And she's now has this get the bag mentality where she's going to save the day. And she's, that same heroine that we know and love. But also, she's about that money, and you better pay her. And this was the part of the story where it felt more like not a natural progression of the story, but they're taking from the games and need to like explain that or like reflect that, even though the games themselves don't reflect that. It's that Samus is a bounty hunter, even though she's really not in the games. But because she's a bounty hunter in the manga, now she's like literally a bounty hunter, and she like inexplicably is all about the bag and needs to be making money. I wish there was a bit more of a clearer motivation, like, oh, she's now doing some kind of work where she needs the funds to save the animals or run this orphanage or whatever it is, and that's why she became a bounty hunter specifically to make that money or something. I feel like she becomes a bounty hunter in this story because like that's what they said she needed to be, because that's what she is in the games technically. So
she feels like a character out of Cowboy Bebop in this chapter, which isn't like the worst thing. Like her character's fine. I love Cowboy Bebop, but like it doesn't fit Samus, especially the Samus that we spent 12 previous chapters with, which I agree. And like it's also just like, this is filler. Like, this is
kind of funny though. It was kind of funny how she's like fighting them, and she's like, "It better be this much," or like, "You are gonna owe me this," and like on the fly. That was kind of fun. Ridiculous.
This is what I mean when I say like there had to be plans for more Metroid manga, because like this is the start. To me, it felt like the start of a completely new like arc, a completely new chapter in this journey of Samus, and felt very
in volume 2. It's what I feel like.
It felt very incongruent with everything that had come before it, and it was weird. I thought that it was very weird. Doom, what did you think about this?
Really have much else to add. Like you said, it's an awkward time jump, and we're missing a lot of context into the changes of, where Samus was previously and where we are now. And like it makes sense that she would be a different character because of that time jump, but when we're not given any information beyond that, it's incredibly jarring. And it's just like, all of the weird mutated plants kind of shenanigans aside, just on its face value, it's just it's honestly, it's just not good storytelling, if I'm being completely honest.
I think it makes sense that like they're not going to give us all the context right out of the gate. Like it's something they're going to, feed to us over time, like how these characters change. I think the biggest thing is that it's because we come from playing the games and we know Samus is a bounty hunter, that when this element specifically is shoehorned into the story, it feels out of place. Whereas I feel like if Samus was up to something else that we didn't have the context for, we could more aptly accept, oh, there's going to be some context and details we're going to be given later, and it'll make sense. Whereas first impression here, we're like, oh, she's a bounty hunter because Samus is a bounty hunter in Metroid, and that's how it's supposed to work, and that's what she is. So that's my interpretation.
It's a weird chapter. I thought this whole chapter stunk, unfortunately. And chapter 14 is a little bit better, but it's not much better. And I want to start out. We get some more scenes with Damara. And I have a question for you. Did you ever watch Mad Men, either of you guys?
No.
I have not watched Mad Men, but I've heard only good things, and I should watch it. Okay,
well, what I'm about to say probably won't hit then, but like, so there is like 5 episodes left in that show, and there are 5 episodes left. Instead of wrapping up, they have like multiple characters that you kind of want to see their stories wrapped up and everything kind of send off in a satisfactory way. But Mad Men instead introduces like a new character, a new love interest for Don Draper with 5 episodes left. And it's like, why are we spending time with this character when like things are coming to a conclusion here? And that's kind of how I felt about Damara a little bit here, which again is like, just tells me that there had to have been plans to make more of these comics, but maybe that just never happened for whatever reason. But I was not invested in this story, like with Damara, like at all. Like at all. And she also seemed like a little bit of a twerple, like she's getting bullied by someone, but I was like,
she's a little kid.
Yeah, she's also like, oh, this is a holy place. And I was like, come on, have a little fun.
Hey, she's respectful.
She is, well, she is, yes. Okay, so by
the way, before we move ahead there, I agree, that's kind of like, it definitely felt like the setup of there's gonna be so much more story, and now we're getting more like world building by getting into like the lives of these even more minor characters in the universe.
Yeah.
It very much reminds me of Naruto, where they go on a bunch of adventures, and like the annoying kids that like bother Naruto when he's like younger, like they come back and now they're going through the ninja academy and going to like the tuning exam, just like Naruto and his friends did. That's kind of what I'm getting from this. We're like, now it's these minor characters going through the academy and they're doing their lives and we're finding out about them. And 100%. This is where, I mean, I don't feel confident that they were planning on more manga, but I definitely did get vibes of like, oh, they're really like building up to this. That's crazy because I can see the PDF file and I know how many pages are left in this
Yeah.
manga. So it's very interesting. We're getting this little bit of a build here, but I liked it. I just wish it was ultimately leading to something more.
Okay, well, we meet back up with Ridley actually. So he is in a position to take out Captain Moak, but instead he has bigger fish to fry, and he's like, I'm gonna take out Adam Malkovich. And Ridley has Metroids with him, or they're still calling it Metroid. They refer to it just singular as Metroid, which maybe, I don't know, maybe that's a translation thing, or maybe not. I'm not sure. And I love seeing this character come back. So Captain Hardy comes back.
Yes,
you might remember
back.
He had that great line about like, I'm gonna carve orders or whatever into your forehead, which was fantastic in the first volume. But Samus is being briefed from Captain Hardy about Metroids, although the Galactic Federation does not know that they are Metroids at this point, but Samus does because she saw them on Zebes all those years ago and knows that they came from the planet SR388, and things are bad. From what I got reading this was that the space pirates took all of the Metroids from SR388, so obviously not doesn't fit exactly with the Metroid lore, but or maybe they just took like the things that they thought were Metroids, and maybe they didn't know that there was a queen or something like that. And I guess that doesn't have to work necessarily against that, or maybe I just read it wrong.
Well, what I got out of it is like similar to how, you know, the Metroid manual and kind of the current story is, where the Galactic Federation took the initial Metroids and they kind of broke into the ship and took their shipment.
Right. So yeah, we're jumping all over the place here. So Damara is getting bullied, but she's rescued by Pianchi, and Keaton and Adam are sending Samus off to Zebes to defeat Mother Brain once and for all. And you know what? I'm going to defend something here because I didn't hate it, and I feel like you guys might hate it. But Adam says something along the lines like, Samus, you don't act like a lady very often, which is kind of like a patronizing line. But he has like kind of an all right, he's just like, listen, you have to remember who you are when you're not battling. And I think the point that he was trying to make is like, this war cannot be your whole life. And I actually like that explanation for why he calls her lady more than what the game tells us. Because the game just says like, oh, Adam calls me lady, but dignified instead of like as an insult. And I never really bought that. Like, it just seems kind of like derogatory to me when he says that. Where, if you were to tell me like he's calling her lady because he wants to kind of symbolize who she is in the real world when she's not battling, I can buy that. So I kind of thought that you guys might not like this, but I was ready to defend it a little bit, and I don't defend Adam very often.
Well, I'm gonna let Adam go ahead. Yeah,
I hated every moment of this. Yeah. I despise this panel. I'm so disappointed. This whole manga, they built Adam up to be like genuine, and we all agreed, like up to this point, I think we all agreed that like Adam was like genuinely one of the coolest characters here, way cooler than in the games. Everything about and I part of this, I feel like a part of this is not just cultural differences, but also just the time it was written. I mean, this was 20 years ago. Times have changed, but oh my god, the way the dialogue is written here, it's just. I can see how you can definitely interpret it one way, but just the literal words, it's I don't like it. It's gross, it's weird, it genuinely does feel very demeaning, even if that wasn't the writer's intent. That's the interpretation that I got. I didn't like any of it. It reminded me of those cringe Other M Samus X Adam shippers reading this. It's just everything about that. I disliked it from the bottom to the top. Can't throw this one into the cybernetic butterfly bin. This one was a definite hit for me.
Yeah. So it's like a mix for me of like I felt like I got the like subtext of what was trying to be said, like what you were kind of going with, Andy, but it was how it was said was, to me, came across because he's a superior as inappropriate. So I get both angles. To me, I definitely got like, don't forget who you are. Like, you remember, don't lose the human aspect of you. Like, you're not just because that's what makes sense with the theme of the story. Yeah, she's not just a weapon; she's a person. She's a human. So like that's makes sense because Adam literally stated the theme for us at the end of the previous volume. So like it's very clear that's like what his character is meant for. Like he's here to kind of state the theme.
Right.
So yes, he's saying it like, don't lose who you are. You're not a weapon. You are human on the inside. You're not just someone who goes out there and fights. How he says it, not ideal. But I do agree, Andy, that it definitely doesn't come across as, I mean, it does kind of come across as patronizing, but not. It almost kind of feels like he's kind of hiding it behind this like faux masculinity of like, this is what I would say if I was this like awful, inappropriate person. I don't know. Like I'm trying, not that I want to give it the benefit of the doubt. I'm just like trying to look at it from the context of like the rest of the story and how, but go ahead, Doom. I see.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if I may, it kind of reminds me actually of the Sector Zero scene in Another M, where when I look at the scene and kind of look at it from an abstract point of view, I can see what Yoshio Sakamoto was trying to convey in that scene. But when you look at it literally, it's just like, what are you doing? That's kind of the same feeling I'm getting here, where it's like I can see what Andy's trying to say, and that's obviously like what the writers are trying to convey here. Those themes of like, don't lose your humanity, don't lose what's important to you. But the literal verbatim text, and again, even being a fan translation, like
if I may,
it's really, and even Samus herself, like she calls Adam out and says like it's really creepy, and it's like,
yeah.
I think that's the only part that makes it awkward. Actually, is Samus saying that. I'm going to read verbatim what he says. He kind of smirks, and Samus says, "What's so funny?" Adam says, "Nothing. I just thought to myself, you don't seem to act very ladylike." And then Samus immediately says, "What's this all of a sudden? Don't get all creepy on me." I didn't interpret that as being creepy. Like I guess I just didn't. And so Adam says immediately after, "It's simple. You should remember what you are when you're not a warrior. Samus, that's something lost in you lately." Samus says, "You overstep your bounds." And let's see. And then she says, "I'm not one of your Federation officers anymore. I'm a bounty hunter." And that's pretty much that. That's their interaction. I don't think it's like that untoward. Like I think what he says actually kind of like, again, gets that point across where it's not like a hey, you're not ladylike. Like I don't think it's that. I think it's like immediate. Maybe if they had left it at
it's
that.
obviously not that, but
like even read like I didn't get the only time I ever got that vibe is when Samus was like, "Oh, don't be a creep." When you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of watching Neon Genesis Evangelion. There's a lot of like weirdly inappropriate things in there and things that
that whole anime and manga is entirely inappropriate in most contexts. So I don't know if that's the best comparison. Go ahead.
Well, it's probably not a good comparison, but it reminded me of something that like Oscar or someone would say, where it's just like it wasn't weird, but now you made it weird by saying something. So I get that you didn't like it, but I don't think it's as I don't know, offensive. I mean, I'm not telling you your interpretation is wrong, but I don't think like verbatim there's that much that's like not like I don't think that there's that much, I guess, inappropriate with what Adam said. And obviously it's, everybody interprets it differently, but
I'm looking at it now, and like on one hand, what I do think the end goal was for Adam to say like, don't lose your human side of it, because like it's like you should remember what you are when you're not a warrior. That's something that's lost in you lately. I think that panel's fine, but if you preempt that with you don't seem act very ladylike recently, it's only fair to assume that what you mean is the womanly aspects of you and not like being a person overall. It's like,
and that's fair.
So like I feel like it's not on Samus to like determine that. Like it was how Adam had said it, not how she reacted to it. And also like, I mean, maybe this isn't the best barometer of it, but like, let's say you had a coworker and a boss in an office, and you heard the boss say this to your coworker. Like, would you not be like, that's a little weird? Like, I would be like, that's a little inappropriate for the workplace. And this is technically the workplace, so like.
Well, but here's the thing is like because we've played the games, like we're kind of preconditioned, like, okay, we know that he calls her lady, so like there's got to be some reason for that. So like I don't fault the manga necessarily for that. Like it's kind of like with the bounty hunter thing. It's like, okay, like we know that Adam calls her this. How do we get there? Like how do we come up with this nickname? I think it sucked, like in Metroid Fusion. And then I guess one thing that we know too is like, Samus, and again, it's not present in this manga, but just by playing the games, we know that Samus kind of thinks of him as a somewhat father figure. So maybe reading it that way, I mean, I don't think either of you are wrong necessarily. I just think like with what we know from the games, what my interpretation, I didn't think it was that scuzzy. Beyond like the dialogue more or less for the entire run of the manga, a lot of times you just kind of throw it out and take the sentiment of it. So I don't know.
I guess for me, because it's like most of the time I've been able to separate, like I've been saying, separate the literal interpretations to the skeleton. For me, like this dialogue, this bit of dialogue was just so egregious that I couldn't separate it. Even though I know that that's not what the intention of the dialogue was. I get that it was very well intentioned what the actual meaning was, but reading it on the paper, it gave me so many other M flashbacks in the worst possible way.
Hey, I can't tell you you're wrong. There's a lot of other M in this manga. There's a lot, and we still have a lot to get to here.
How this influenced other M for sure, like 100%.
Oh,
There's a
man.
lot of like you can tell like they read this in the manga, or like, boop, boop, I'm
That's a good idea. Let's take it and take that.
Take that bad boy.
Oh, that looks good. Let's try that.
Yeah,
like
100%, 100%.
Okay, so at this point, I'm kind of just like, oh my god, let's wrap this up. And Samus lands on Zebes, and she starts fighting with some hostile life forms. Mother Brain and Ridley are in Torian, and I felt like at this point, because of all the action, it was really difficult to figure out what the hell was going on. Big Daddy Kraid shows up, and even that, I was just kind of like, this.
Oh wait, we're in chapter 15 now, right? Tooth and
No,
nail?
not yet. We're
Not
still
yet?
in chapter 14 because we have the Kraid fight going on.
Oh, I thought that was chapter 15. Okay, go ahead.
I think I don't know. I think it's chapter 14, but I could be wrong. But anyways, so Samus had no. This is kind of a cool fight with Kraid. I would have loved to see it with color and like with full panels like that. Unfortunately,
You know,
manga
that
is
was a
so
cool fight?
small. Yeah, I thought it was a fine fight. I don't know. It was fine.
Yeah.
I mean, what are you gonna do, right? Like it's
No, but this was one of those things where it was like almost the writers like forgot about Kraid. And
A
then,
little
like,
bit, yeah.
They're like almost at the end. They're like, oh my god.
Well, I felt that way
Kraid in
about
the Metroid manga.
I felt that way about
We
the
gotta
whole
put it-
ending chapters. Like it was like
Well, that's
oh,
the-
we better throw in some Metroid enemies now that she's on.
Well, that's the
Zebes.
shame about this is I think it would have been so cool. Like this manga would have been so cool if like the first volume was everything up until this point, and then the second volume was like a retelling of the original Metroid, like in a full detailed way, and like with an adaptation, like to make it more narratively pleasing and whatever, have some more conversation, etc.
Yeah.
But here it's like we're on Zebes and like we're immediately rushing through the adventure on Zebes, and it's interesting because like this is where the adaptation of like what happens in Metroid, like it goes from okay, the story was coming up with a lot of original elements, and now it's taking from the games, but it's now adapting them in a way different way, and it's way different than how it happens in the game itself. And Kraid is just kind of plopped right in. By the way, before this, Samus says zero mission literally in the fan translation, which I thought was funny. Like it's morphin time. Like
A little
that's
on
literally
the nose. Yeah.
a little on that, which was funny. But yeah, it's like we get into this like Samus now attacking. She's kind of going through like a bunch of Metroid enemies. She fights like a Diorum, which was really cool. But like it's like Mother Brain's like sending the enemies at her like a gauntlet style almost. It's
Like
not
a
like
boss
Samus
rush
is
mode.
actually like it's not like Samus is like adventuring around. Like Mother Brain's like, oh, those enemies weren't enough for you. Here's Kraid. Like, how can you handle this? Like it's like that part in Dragon Ball Z, the Majin Buu arc where they're on the ship with Babidi and they're just sending all these aliens at them. Like, here's how you gonna deal with this one. Huh? It's like the pit of 100 levels or whatever. And it was an odd adaptation. And I wish this is one of my biggest gripes with the story. I wish we got like a fully fleshed out adventure on Zebes instead of this kind of like rushed part adaptation, part original story involving the events of the original game, kind of. So yeah, it ends up going. It's weird. And it's like here's Kraid, Ridley's comrade. I'm like, literally, we have never saw him up until this point. Ridley has never mentioned Kraid up until this point. He's unceremoniously dropped in, and then Samus does have a pretty cool fight. But
I mean, it's fan service. That's all it is at this point.
It is, and also like they have to make some changes. Like they couldn't just drop the original Metroid like 1-to-1 and adapt it like with no changes. I think they did need to take some liberty of like making it more like interaction. Like they have Samus and Mother Brain interacting. Like that's fine.
Yeah.
I think they just wish they could have struck a bit more of a balance between what happens in the actual game and this wildly different take on it that does not resemble the original game at all.
We were talking about how Other M was influenced by the manga just a few moments ago. Literally, the Mother Brain mind controlling all the creatures and making them go after Samus is literally the exact thing the MBAI does in Other M. I just wanted to point that out. But yeah, I don't know. Not much to add here. I think it's really funny. I thought it was pretty funny how like Kraid is introduced like a WWE wrestler, like a boxer.
Yeah.
You have like Ridley the announcer going weighing in at 4 kilotons. He's the biggest, baddest Hulk in the arena.
Big Daddy Kraid business is just picked up. Yeah, I mean, like it was silly. It was it was whatever. It was also great seeing like ginormous Kraid on this little itty bitty panel which I thought was funny.
They had to zoom out for him.
Yeah. Okay.
Watch out! Oh, RKO out of nowhere.
I'm gonna rush through chapter 15, and
that was chapter 15.
No, that was chapter 14. We still got the whole other chapter to go. So here we go.
Okay.
So. And Samus is by the way, so the ending of chapter 14 is Samus is drained after beating Kraid, or she basically
passes out. That's the end of
out.
chapter 15.
That's the end of chapter 14.
It's not. I'm looking at it right now.
Are there 16 chapters?
Yes, there's 16 chapters. Chapter 15 end is Samus passed out after using her hugely strong weapons, the missile launcher and the morph ball bomb.
You know what? I wrote down chapter 14 twice. I'm sorry. You are correct. I'm sorry.
Yes. Sorry.
Okay, chapter 16. Speaking of pro wrestling.
Okay, well, before we go ahead to chapter 16, can I jump in, Rob?
Of course.
I love that the big abilities Samus gets are the missile launcher and the morph ball bomb. I don't mind how Adam gives it to Samus. I think how this story is constructing it makes more sense for Samus to be given those abilities than for her to just kind of like find them.
Yep.
Even though it would have been cool for her to find it in some interesting way. I also love, however, once again, Mother Brain not planning very well. Her big trump card is Kraid, who loses to conventional weapons such as the missile and the bomb. It was just kind of interesting to me like that. Like they're like, oh, Samus has these 2 new weapons, and they're like conventional weapons that have been around for literally centuries that anyone could have prepared for, and Kraid loses to them and is like almost tailored to lose to them specifically.
Yeah.
Again, another kind of thing where the story is now kind of being held to the games almost. Like we got to work Kraid in there. Oh, Kraid has to kind of lose the way he loses in the games. But Samus just got these abilities. We got to have to make it work together, and it doesn't necessarily jive and work together super well.
I agree. Where like for an adaptation like a comic or a movie or anything like that, I don't want to see Samus exploring and getting power ups necessarily. Maybe you could do like 1 or 2 like Indiana Jones style, but like I don't want to see that for like the bulk of it. I like that she's just like given this weaponry from which also kind of makes sense in terms of like what we see in Metroid Fusion as well. So okay, chapter 16. I'm sorry, 16. So Samus is down and out. And she
passes out. She passes out.
She passed out from the pain.
Can we not gloss over this? She passes out from fighting Kraid and using her newfound abilities.
Kraid is a formidable opponent, and what we see next, well, it can only be described as something right out of A Christmas Carol, because we get Samus having a vision of Grey Voice, who tells her that she also echoes what Adam said. You should not lose yourself to being a warrior, and you don't have to sacrifice yourself in order to bring peace to the galaxy. And he kind of shows her all of her friends that are also fighting alongside her. First and foremost, Adam, who is in tough against Ridley and his ship, and Ridley is preparing to go back to Zebes to finish off Samus, and Adam is like, we cannot allow that to happen. We have to stop him. And I thought that actually this was going to lead to like Adam's death, but Ridley just goes, so that didn't really lead to anything. We see Mach, who's still got a sweet beard. He's on his home planet fighting space pirates and is saved by Kreitz. and both of them decide to head to Zebes to help Samus. We also see Damara, who's just like sitting around and praying, and she's once again with Chairman Keaton, who you would have thought that they would have kept like a million miles apart after the flower ordeal, but whatever. And
no suspicion on her whatsoever.
I guess not. And here we go. The ghost of Grey Voice past gives Samus and Samus kind of reminisces about her journey as well. And there's a funny line where she's like, "You've gotten taller," but like, which is meant to kind of, in my mind, it's like meant to go with like a little space, a little silence, a little, but like it's so condensed and action packed that you don't have time for that here. So like, the panel right after, Grey Voice is like, "I've got something for you," and he gives her the Varia suit and declares the time of the Chozo is over. It's time for the new generation to lead this galaxy.
Woo.
Which actually I don't hate. I don't hate that, but like it would have been a lot better if this was not the literal ghost of Grey Voice and maybe it was just like Grey Voice and that's his like Darth Vader redemption arc or something. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But this is the point where Ridley breaks in and he breaks up the dream sequence. They have a pretty cool fight actually. I thought that this was pretty cool. Samus busts out the wave beam, the ice beam, and finishes him off.
Out of nowhere. Never mentioned prior in the story. Just bam! Fires him off.
Super missile right to the face.
And she has to say the name of the beam as she's firing it like an anime protagonist.
Well, you know what? That's fine. If you've ever watched the Zelda cartoon, every single time Link sees an enemy, he's like, Octorok! Just to make sure that people know what it is. So, yeah, I that's okay. Yeah, this is a cool fight. And then, but... here we go. Samus goes to Torian and sees all the Metroids and sees Mother Brain, and I'm ready for the finale, and it's over.
Yeah.
What
wow. This was...
What
this has to be one of the craziest rug pulls I think I've ever experienced reading a story. I was like, okay, like... Here we go. The third act.
This limped along for so long after we got off of Zebes the first time, and we had all that nonsense with the flowers and Damara and now we're finally back, and I'm finally excited. I'm finally ready, and we're done. And I was like, you got
they sector zeroed it. They sector zeroed us. It's another Other M thing that they pulled.
Nah, this is worse. At least Other M's story like finishes technically. This was, I could not believe this. I was like, yeah, this is exactly like you, Andy. Like, okay, like we got our time skip, we had our setup again. Like we're ready like to go full throttle into like the big. I knew there was an issue when Kraid showed up randomly. When Kraid showed up randomly with no, I'm like, wait a second, we're rushing through the events of Metroid. I'm like, okay, maybe we're just gonna like rush through it and that'll be the last few chapters. But then like, I was like, oh, there's only 10 pages left of this PDF file. I don't know. Yeah, I could not believe there was so much more. We don't get the final confrontation between Samus and Mother Brain. Samus obliterates Ridley, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But, like, we don't get the final confrontation. We don't get any, like, there's so much more story to tell. And it just ends. I could not believe it.
This stunk.
Find out what happens next in Metroid Zero Mission, and
I guess go play the game. I guess go play the game. I could not believe this. There's no way they could have wrapped up such a good story, and
I think so. This just stunk and left I was already kind of struggling with Volume 2, and when I got to the end, I was like, that's it? Like, that's it? So, like, I feel like there had to have been something in the real world that caused this comic to stop running. Because, like, I mean, my God, that's like getting to Thanos, and it's just like rolling credits on Avengers Endgame. And, go read a comic if you want to figure out what happens. Like, what?
You mean Infinity War?
No, I mean, like, literally Endgame. Like, they're about to fight Thanos for the final battle, and then it's just like...
gotcha.
No. Movie's over. So, that stunk. And I think... I was thinking to myself after, I was like, I think if it would have ended at Part 1... Where Part 1 ended, I thought was fantastic. And I think that if you would have left it at that would have been one of the greatest Metroid stories, because it's like this awesome origin story. Even if you have the loose end of like, well, how do you like rectify the fact that Grey Voice is there and like bring him into the series? maybe that's just like your little bit of
I
difference, but
can't-
like
I can't subscribe to that because both of those would still be non-endings. Like the end of volume 1 is the midpoint of the story. Like you need to keep going
yes,
from here.
I
And
think
this,
like at least that might work as like a mother brain like origin story, or like an origin story for the space pirates, and a little bit of Samus, and at least establishes that rivalry between Samus and Ridley. And I'm not saying that'd be perfect, but man, that was better than this. This stunk.
I was very let down because I was like, this has like okay, I don't necessarily agree with like how it's the game is being adapted, like Zero Mission or Metroid being adapted, fine. But there's still much more meat on the bone. I was like, oh, where are they get like what elements are they gonna introduce that are different from the games that are interesting to like keep the story going and bring us to the finale?
Yeah,
Like what is Tori gonna be like? Like she didn't get to go through all of that. I It's such a shame because there was so much more that they could have done. I was expecting another volume. Like they could do a volume 3 almost, so like a few chapters, and it's yeah. What
Yeah,
really
you could do
should've-
volume 3 with the ending of NES Troid and then the ship getting shot down because clearly it's like tied in with Zero
I mean,
Mission.
really, what should have happened? What should have happened was having, like I said, like volume 1 end at the Phoenix 3 chapter, so chapter 12, right?
mm-hmm.
End at chapter 12. Boom, that's end of volume 1. And then volume 2, go from there and have that go to the end of a longer adventure and have it end with the actual ending of Zero Mission. That would have been perfect. It would have been a full
agree.
conclusive story. It's baffling. I was baffled by it ending like that. I could not believe it. I was so invested in the story.
I know.
I was so
It's
invested.
it's bizarre because like on one hand, because here's the thing, on one hand, you know, the cliffhanger of the last one, you don't know what's coming up next, but I feel like that makes the cliffhanger more interesting because you want to know, okay, well, how is this going to get resolved?
Yeah.
In Torian, you know, because we're already now in the game adaptation, I mean, we know how that goes, but at the same time, that also makes the cliffhanger less interesting because it's like, okay, well, what was the point of that? Like, there's no
Yeah.
mystery, there's no suspense, but at the same time, we want to see, like, how you're going to reinterpret Zero Mission at the same time, so it just, everything about it just doesn't feel satisfying, no matter what way you look at it.
It should have ended after the original escape from Zebes. If not, like I would have ended it honestly at part
No.
1. I think I would have.
I think it's still I would have been also I also would have felt robbed because I still feel like so much of that was like set up for a larger story.
Yeah.
Like there's no point in the story I think here or earlier that would have been okay to end the story, unfortunately. Like I would have still felt like, oh, there's so much more to go. And here it's like, okay, we got a little bit of a taste of how they would have adapted Zero Mission. We get a little bit of a taste of what happens after that finale, but we don't get the full true like thematic resolution and
Right.
full like circle on the plot and I mean, we literally didn't have Samus versus Mother Brain. And honestly, the fact that we didn't get Samus versus Mother Brain, because it's essentially what's left out of this, right? Like we kind of get the rest of her adventure on Zeb's speed ran. My thought is I actually don't think they were planning on going beyond this at all. I think the idea was we're not going to show you that because you need to go play the games.
You could be right.
You know,
Yeah.
I think that's what it is because pretty much everything in volume 1 is like original story you can't get from the games, and then the second volume, a majority of like it's rushed through because they're like, oh, we don't want to give you too much of what's in the game, so we're going to come up with a little more original content. But then it immediately kind of ends the second it gets to like stuff that they'd rather you go buy the game and play the game. So that's unfortunately I think what might have happened.
That is true now that I think about it, because it ends at the final boss, quote unquote, of NES Metroid, and so it doesn't even tap into any of the new stuff that Zero Mission does post game.
Well,
Yep.
I think that this was out before Zero Mission was even made. Right? Like this came
That's
out.
what I'm saying.
2003,
I think they were using this to lead into Zero Mission. is
You
what
could
I'm
be
saying.
right, yeah. But I feel like that just leaves such a bad taste in my mouth. Like
Yeah.
I actually am fine if they didn't adapt any of the events of Metroid. Like I feel like that game is its own thing. That can be its own story. But I was invested in the lead up and the origin story of Samus and the pirates and stuff like that. And like there was an opportunity there to cap it at that story, and maybe it would have been as super satisfying. But I feel like it would have had to have been more satisfying than what we got, because that was just like a fart in church. It was It was terrible.
I think the resources that were used to set up and briefly retell Zero Mission should have been put into kind of what caused Samus to leave the Federation, and maybe maybe we would have gotten a more satisfying explanation than Other M. My final Other M dig for today. If we had gotten that in the manga prior.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I mean, Zero Mission dropped what in 2004, right?
Four,
Manga, the first volume of it runs up until the end of 2003. So all of the original story content in volume 1 is leads up until the end of December of 2003, and then volume 2 is January through May of 2004 when around Zero Mission comes out. So that's kind of when like, oh, you read up all the story. The new game just came out. Go play that.
Yeah.
Stop reading this. Go read that. Go play that. So, yeah, that kind of lines up.
So obviously lots of loose ends here. We still have Chozo that are living that we don't know where they go. We still have, I mean, obviously the battle between Mother Brain and Samus. We have Adam, and we know eventually at some point he will be no more. I don't know what happens to any of our other supporting characters. Lots of questions. It seemed like there's an opportunity for more, but
this needs to be brought back. Someone needs to revive the Metroid manga as its own lore. I mean, at this point, like, who cares if it's canon or not? I want to see the rest of this particular story. And see where it goes.
Metroid manga retold with better writing, I actually think would go pretty hard.
Yeah. I mean, there's still aspects of like, and this even goes back to Other M Infusion. Like, even if you retranslated or had like the original text perfectly translated, you still can't change action and behavior of the characters and all that stuff. You can only change like somewhat of the content of what they say. So like at the end of the day, like, yeah, that would be cool, but also there's still stuff in the manga that and in the games that wouldn't change even if you tried to, you know, sprinkle it a little bit here and there. So
and you're also beholden to the stuff that happens in the games too. Like a perfect example of that is the lady nickname for Samus from Adam, right? Like it kind of stinks, but like, you know, was this
explained?
It needs to be explained, and justified. So yeah, that was a little bit of sour note to end this Metroid manga on, unfortunately. But the good news, gentlemen, is that we have an opportunity to return to the world of Metroid manga, and we're not going to do it next week, but we will make this an ongoing, regular occurring series where, you know, we're going to be back and we're going to be looking at some of the most revered pieces of manga in this franchise, and of course including Samus and Joey, which is a big fan favorite.
the most revered manga. Like Samus and Joey.
There's a lot of people that really dig it, and I have to admit, I have no idea what it's about beyond the most basic of premise, where Samus is probably with a guy named Joey, and we'll see how that goes. But there's also some other really cool stuff that I'm looking forward to getting into. So an opportunity to just be a little bit silly, a little bit, explore some other stories in the Metroid universe. So I think that'll be cool. I think it was a worthwhile endeavor. It didn't stick the landing, I don't think, unfortunately, but I don't regret. Of course, going in there, I thought part 1 was really, really strong. There are parts of part 2 that I think are, pretty cool. For nothing, for better or worse, you could very clearly see how important this manga was to influencing future Metroid titles. And in fact, there's a lot of panels 100%. From this game that are directly in Zero Mission. So pretty important piece of media.
Yeah, it's really cool. I'm glad we are able to jump into this. This is kind of like the most revered like non-game media for Metroid. So it's really cool you're able to jump into this. Ultimately, for me, I would say that I would give it a pretty decent rating. I overall enjoyed it a lot. I think it was a mostly good story that's somewhat faithful to the Metroid we know and love, but it introduces a lot of cool like new elements that expand on the universe a little bit, and I think were necessary for telling like a coherent, like full story, like adding new characters and whatnot, and digging a bit more into the Federation. I love like how the space pirates were depicted. I love Samus's character depiction. A lot of the depiction of these characters.
I love her friends too, by the way.
I love all her friends. Yeah, like it really it felt like a fleshed out, like true kind of Metroid story. I love, and I wish we got more of like the Zero Mission adaptation, because even that was cool. Volume 1 a lot stronger than Volume 2. Volume 2, it was like it's not mind blowing or an impressive or maybe even the best Metroid story, but I thought it was enjoyable. I thought it was compelling. I thought it was going somewhere. I think that's maybe the hardest thing to recommend about it is that like you have to be okay with recommending a story that doesn't have an ending. If you keep that out of it, I would recommend it for Metroid fans for sure. Like if you're a Metroid fan, you haven't read it, read it. If you're a fan of like anime and manga in general, I'd say it's a light, harmless read that you could, knock out in an afternoon or two. So it's not bad. I probably wouldn't recommend it for new Metroid fans because it doesn't have an ending and it contradicts with stuff and it might confuse you, but probably something to check out once you've gotten into the games a bit more. It's I would give it like a 7 point, probably a 7.
Yeah, I'd give it like a B, not a B plus.
I'm kind of being generous with it. I'm being generous with it because it doesn't have an ending. Like that, the fact that it doesn't have an ending makes it so hard to like really truly recommend as a good story because it's not finished. It feels unfinished. But for what it is, I can recommend it. I enjoyed it. I'm glad we read through it. It's not perfect, but it's not even remotely as bad as I was kind of expecting. And in fact, it surprised me pretty pleasantly a lot throughout the way. Overall, a fun Metroid story that I would recommend to Metroid fans to check out if you have the time someday.
Yeah, overall, I'm really glad that I got to read it. If it weren't for us doing a podcast episode on this, I probably would have never touched this thing. So I'm glad that I finally got a reason to go out and finally able to digest this. And I don't think I was hot on it as much as you guys, especially in that first episode. But again, I was really surprised about how kind of my journey throughout this kind of evolved going through. Right. Overall, I'd probably give it like a 5 or a 6 out of 10. And I don't mean that as a bad grade. I mean that as like, I think it's perfectly mid. I think it's perfectly fine. There's elements of it that really surprised me that I really like and stuff that I want to see explored in the future. Like that one interrogation scene where that one space pirate is telling Mach, I believe it is, where it's like, hey, the Federation just let your species in. Once they're done with us, you're next on the chopping block. You're just a tool and they're using you. I thought concepts like that were really cool and interesting, and I want to see that dived in more. There's other and then Adam, aside from that one panel that I went off on, probably the best interpretation of the character in this manga. Just a genuinely really cool and charismatic character, and again, aside from that panel, I really wanted to see more of him.
Yep, I think that's fair. This is what I would say. I would liken it to a Netflix show that has one really amazing season. Okay, season two, it's not so great, and then it gets canceled, and so you never really get the ending. So if you're okay with that, if you're okay watching one season that is awesome, one season that maybe doesn't hit as much, and then like knowing that it gets canceled, this is for you. If not, maybe not, but definitely a worthwhile.
That's a perfect analogy. I'm sorry, but that is like a perfect analogy right there. 100%.
Well,
immediately flashback to Jessica Jones with that one.
Oh yeah, that's good actually. Okay, well, oh my God, goodness, this is a long one, but I feel like we did this justice. I feel like we really went full depth as this manga deserved. So I'm happy that we did this. I'm excited to be doing more of this in the future. But we're going to take a break from the manga for a little bit, but we will be back. In the meantime, of course, we want to encourage you guys to check us out over on Twitter, at Omega Metroid Pod, at Spiteri316, at DaxCity_, at Doominal Cross. Check out OmegaMetroid.com. As mentioned at the top of the show, we just posted our new Metroid Zero Mission walkthrough. There's more on the way. I got something cooking right now, so about halfway done, so that'll be up there shortly. Lots of maps, guides, news, you name it, it's there. Check out OmegaMetroid.com and check us out wherever you get your podcast. Like and subscribe. That, my friends, is going to do it for this week. But, of course, we will see everybody next week. Take care.